Well, hello again, and welcome to the lecture for week 2 of ORGL 5005, Leadership and Organization. This lecture is adapted from the Dimensions of Leadership profile by Inkscape Publishing. Let's start with defining the difference between leaders and managers. We always want our managers to be good leaders, but that is not always the case, as we know, and we certainly know of leaders who are not managers in the formal supervisory sense of the word. Inkscape explains that managers derive their influence from the authority vested in their position. In the extreme, they can exert that influence by coercion. Do what I say or else. Leaders, in the pure sense of the word, derive their ability to influence from their relationships with others, people who choose to follow. This is a much more dynamic and even reciprocal relationship. Consider this metaphor of the dynamic, situational, and reciprocal nature of leadership. As a flock, these geese have goals around food, safety, rest, etc. There is a leader flying on point, and that is a difficult position because the lead goose is responsible for keeping the flock on course for a safe resting place with food and for avoiding dangerous obstacles while bearing more of the wind resistance than the others. So it's tiring too. So the leader goose will eventually drop back to rest and the others will take the point. As Kaz's imposter point out, this illustrates a reciprocal, situational leadership relationship based on choices and decisions. To summarize this perspective, leaderships and followers are in a dynamic relationship. Depending on the needs of the situation, leaders will focus on different things. And as we will see shortly, not all leaders will focus on the same things. And finally, leaders and followers may exchange roles as needs and circumstances evolve. Okay, so as I mentioned in the previous slide, not all leaders focus on the same things. Well, why is that? Well, simply because faced with a leadership need, different things get different people's attention. This chart illustrates how our attention is drawn by needs. Character. This is where we're more internally focused versus accomplishment, which is more externally focused. And interaction, which is more socially focused, versus analysis, which is more intellectually focused. People are seldom 100% in any one of these dimensions, so there is a wide range of how leaders view, process, and respond to their leadership situations. Let's explore a little more about what that means. Character-focused leaders. They are responding to their own conscience, their own sense of right and wrong. Therefore, they tend to have very internally based concerns. And they tend to reflect the value of their followers, since they tend to be similarly focused. Very focused on mission. And this is certainly true in the case of nonprofits, faith-based organizations, political organizations, save the, whatever kind of organizations, that sort of thing. In order to keep things on track when times are tough, character-focused leaders will be seeking sources of hope and of enthusiasm. And because of their personal internal focus, they tend to be open to learning, particularly as it relates to their areas of concern. By contrast, analysis-focused leaders respond to ideas. Ideas are their source of intellectual stimulation. They have intellectual concerns, which is a subtle way of saying that they do not let their feelings get in the way. Now, it's not that they don't have feelings. No. It's just that they can set their feelings aside in order to make the best, most logical, most defensible decisions. They tend to look towards the future, not just the current big picture, whatever that might be, but also the end game, what the future big picture would be about. They see implications, not just facts. Context is everything for these leaders, and is what helps them understand potential future outcomes. They evaluate risk and opportunities, which is something we'll talk about a little more later in the course. They tend to be very pragmatic, data-driven, and sometimes they can be seen as cold. They tend to follow their intuitive leads. And because they synthesize data and context at a very high level, they are capable of successfully making the kinds of intuitive leaps that can precipitate enormous change. When we look at accomplishment-focused leaders, we see people who respond to problems. It's their external focus, the opportunity to fix something. They have external concerns. And this is not to say that they don't have a conscience. It's just that they are more focused on the external big picture. So they can get things done, so they can make things happen. And they do it by overcoming whatever obstacles are out there. And they do that to a great extent by getting people working together. And you can see them take control, get back in the driver's seat when things start to get out of hand. Finally, we have our interaction-focused leaders. They respond very much to people and are driven by social concerns, both in themselves and in others. They strive to understand the wants and needs of others. They want to know what motivates the people around them. They are constantly monitoring feelings, both in themselves and in others. And they will regularly encourage their followers when things are difficult. And finally, at all times, they communicate caring. What was it somebody was saying? I feel your pain. There is no one ideal leadership focus or response. It's important to understand that. Sometimes the best leadership decision is to recognize the nature of the situation being faced and the relative leadership strengths among the community of followers, and then make sure the appropriate person for the situation has the support and resources they need to succeed as the leader. Can you think of examples where that maybe has or has not occurred? Well, that's all for this week. See the next slide for some final notes. Whoops, went too far. Let's try that again. Okay, just a reminder, don't forget those deadlines on Wednesday and Sunday. Work hard, learn a lot. See you next week.